I'd never forgive myself if I didn't ask what I'm about to ask. In addition to your formal education at institutions for music, you were also one of the last one-to-one students of the great classical guitar maestro Julian Bream. Pretty much everybody watching and listening to this will know who Julian Bream was and will doubtless have an immense respect for his artistry and legacy. I'm aware this is a very personal thing to have to answer, but would you mind sharing with us some of your favourite memories of your time with Julian and how you feel that's helped shape you into the artist you are today?
Yeah, I actually genuinely loved having lessons with Julian. I thought he was a really brilliant teacher. And people sometimes ask me, was it similar to the masterclasses that you can see on BBC? Because the BBC had filmed masterclasses with him when he was much younger. And it kind of wasn't really that similar to that. I suppose that was maybe a more, maybe just different phase of his life, but also a more public facing, you maybe have to make everything a little bit more official or whatever. But to be honest, it just felt like we would go through pieces in great detail. We could be there for hours and just really work through in great detail. And it was really just looking at sort of what is the music trying to do, what's it trying to say, and how can you convey that? And he just had a really, he'd give me a lot of suggestions, but he'd always give me a reason for every suggestion, and the reason was often really quite inspiring and profound. So you hold on to the reason maybe more than the thing itself. So in that sense, I think that's really good teaching, because you're not just learning a set of instructions that you don't really know. Okay, I have to go loud here. Why? But I don't know, but I'll do it anyway. But you're actually getting a little bit more to the heart of the music itself and what it feels like. But one thing, I think he helped me to just feel things for myself more, which again is like, how do you teach someone to feel things? I've heard some people say you can't teach people to feel things, which is one way of looking at it. But I felt that he did help me to, and he would often say, you know when it's right, not like right and wrong, but just like, you know when it feels right. And in a way encouraged me to trust myself more and trust that it would be there. But also I think he really taught me so much about making the guitar sing, because he would often say, I would play something, say something that's quite melodic and slow, that's got a really beautiful melody, for example, and he would say, it's not singing. And I would be thinking, yeah, it is. I mean, this is pretty much as singing as it can get on the guitar. I mean, the guitar is not really that singing anyway, and this is as good as it's going to get, etc. I wasn't maybe consciously thinking that, but in the back of my mind, that's probably what I was thinking. And then just him saying it's not singing, in a way, it made me think, oh, okay, so maybe a much higher level of singingness is possible. And to some degree, I think when you're playing a piece of music, if you think that something is possible with that piece of music, that's already the first step, because if you've already thought, well, it can't be any more singing or exciting or characterful or dramatic or whatever than this, because it's a guitar or whatever, then, well, it's definitely not going to be. But if you're thinking this is going to be like as singing as the most wonderful singer in the world, even if it's not quite, you've still got a higher chance of it being pretty singing and getting close to there, because that's what you thought you could achieve in the first place. So it just totally transformed my approach to singingness on the guitar and phrasing in general. I felt he taught me so much about phrasing. Again, I can't say how, there's no piece of advice, but it really, transformed my my whole way of phrasing, I think.
There's some amazing things you talked about there, and I particularly liked how you spoke of how he helps show you that you shouldn't put an upper limit on what you're trying to do with certain things. Because if you do that, you're instantly boxing yourself in. And I think that's wonderful, wonderful advice. I'd like to ask a little follow-up to that, if I may. I don't know if you find this, but it's often very difficult to assess things objectively when you're kind of in the moment of them. And you only realize how profound certain bits of advice are when you've had a bit of time to kind of mull over it and experience it in the real world. Have you found that with your experiences with Julian Bream?
Yeah, I think everything that I've ever learned that was kind of worthwhile hasn't just been like, oh great, I got that now, woo! Because if it was that easy, I would have probably learned it already. Sadly, so I think it's more. I've always felt that it kind of takes me about a year anyway, just for something to really sink in any way at all. And yes, I think I still think of the things that he said and the approach now. And I think it's even affected my composition, for example, because I suppose what I also admired with Julian was how much conviction he had in what he was doing and how into it he was, because he was so into music. And when he was retired, obviously, when I was having the lessons with him, but he said that he would just sit for hours on end listening to music now that he was retired because he didn't have to be rushing about all the time, which shows a real love for it. If you just want to sit there and listen to, he could have listened to other stuff, I guess, but he was just choosing to listen to music for hours a day. And that passion and commitment, I guess I was inspired by that. And I thought, what am I passionate about like that? And one of those things is composing and just this very extremely creative work that I like to do. And so I think that encouraged me to do my thing and be myself more, which is maybe not what you'd expect, because when someone has their own very strong conviction, it might make you think, oh, I've got to be like them and do the thing that they wanted, that they're doing, because they're so convinced. But I think with time, I just took the conviction part. It was like, yeah, and I applied that to my own things, if that makes sense.